Every spring, millions of monarch butterflies migrate into the United States. It's part of an incredible annual journey of several thousand miles from Mexico to Canada before the butterflies return in the fall. But the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service warns the monarch is in trouble. The agency has until June to determine whether the species requires federal protection as an endangered species, due in part to climate change. We traveled to the start of this great migration in Michoacan, Mexico, and we were able to visit a remote section of the forest where tourists are not allowed. 100 miles from Mexico City, 9,000 feet above sea level, you'll find what at first seems to be nothing at all. If you came to see the butterflies, well, the skies here are empty. But look closer. The trees in this forest are dripping with monarchs, millions huddled together for warmth until the sun hits. And one by one, they fly. How does it feel to see them for the first time each year?
I feel like a newborn.
Eduardo Rendon directs the World Wildlife Fund's Monarch Butterfly Program in Mexico. Inside the country's butterfly reserve, scientists measure the monarchs by area. 15 acres of coverage this year is the largest population in more than a decade, up 144% over last year.
The monarch butterfly is in trouble. Everybody's into saving it.
Tiara Curry, a senior scientist with the Center for Biological Diversity, made a special trip to see the monarchs this year.
I am scared that this is the last big bumper year, because this year is because of perfect weather last year. It was like a Cinderella weather year. Everything that could go right did. So this is the most monarchs that we may see for a while.
To appreciate the sheer scale of this year's migration, Rendon led us into a restricted area, the reserve.
There's no more grass.
A clearing where monarchs filled the air like confetti.
What they are thinking right now.
What are they thinking?
Yeah.
What do you think they're thinking?
They are thinking we must back.
We must get back?
Yeah.
The hour is late and we have many miles to travel.
Yeah.
The monarchs we saw were likely on their way to America that very day, Rendon believes. By late March, the species had been sighted in a dozen states as far north as Oklahoma. Later this spring and summer, 3 generations of monarchs should blanket the entire United States east of the Rockies. Then in mid-August, a special super generation will fly all the way back to Mexico, to these very same mountains.
So these butterflies are the great-great-grandchildren of the butterflies that were here last winter.
Yeah. This is the 5th generation.
Just a few years ago, Rendon worried he might be seeing the last generation. Between 1994 and 2016, this eastern monarch population plunged more than 80%, and a federal review found a substantial probability of collapse in the next 2 decades.
This year was a fluke due to weather.
Curry authored the petition to protect the monarch as a federally endangered species.
In the United States, monarchs are threatened by climate change because of more severe storms when they're migrating in the spring and in the fall.
So the bigger storms just blow them out of the air?
Blow them out of the air, disrupt the migration, cause them to get stuck in places, or if it's too warm, then they stay north too long and then it gets cold and then they die.
In fact, an estimated 40% of all insect species are in decline, a die-off that threatens an animal much higher on the food chain.
The human being eat biodiversity.
Our presence on the planet is dependent on their presence on the planet.
Exactly. That is my point.
People grew up with them, they're familiar. In the U.S., they represent summer outside. They're so important culturally. No one has ever said, I hope the monarch goes extinct.
Hope we're not in trouble for getting into that remote part of the park. But, I can imagine some people watching that and thinking, I like one butterfly on a flower in my yard.
Yes.
A whole swarm of them is like out of a horror movie. But
Yes.
I got to say,
I'm one of those people.
You're one of those people.
I was a little
I had
freaked
a
out.
feeling.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that spectacle. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it is spectacular. And, they're in trouble. And if they're in trouble, we're in trouble. Because,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, if insects go away, it impacts the food supply.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be going like this in the summertime because mosquitoes, biting flies, they're all still thriving.
Yes.
No luck on that front.
think they're
Butterflies
beautiful.
better than mosquitoes.